Hello and welcome to this week's Friday Facebook Live with me, Louisa Whitney. And I'm really excited to introduce Karen Marshall. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm very well, Louisa. Hi, thanks for inviting me here today. I'm really excited connecting.
Fantastic. And Karen's here because she wrote a guest blog on my website. People may or may not have had the chance to look at that, and I've included the link on the broadcast. But I think it might be helpful, Karen, just for you to talk a bit about what it is that you do and how you came to do the job that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. I'm currently a relationship success and recovery coach, also a health and wellbeing practitioner. I understand the mind, body, and energy, also how to accelerate relationship, personal happiness, and also relationship success. Where I started my journey, it was quite a few years ago. I'd been through a relationship breakdowns over a course of a number of years. And it was something that I was determined that I wanted to find a relationship that was going to be extraordinary, because I was in an 11-year relationship initially, and I ended that relationship not understanding about, what makes us tick on a level. I didn't understand love and what our deeper needs were together as a couple. And then when I started another significant relationship, which was quite a few years on, that relationship ended. So I've experienced it from both sides of the fence. But during that journey, just long story short, over 7 years of my journey living as a single woman and also a businesswoman, living and supporting myself financially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, on so many levels. I understand what it means to survive, but also how to find and build a relationship that works, because over 7 years I studied the relationship mistakes we make and why we make them, because I wanted to find extraordinary. So how I help individuals is really to accelerate their journey, because of I have created a program that combines 20 years of my personal insight, my knowledge, my professional skills as a wellbeing expert and qualified practitioner into a program that really accelerates results. But that's over a sort of a 2-day program. And that's sort of really structured in a way that, having worked with individuals one-to-one, which is really important, to support that way, or couples, what I recognise working with individuals, that in 9 months with one subject, just for example, confidence, working as a coach, empowering the individual to take steps, different actions to cross. But all of my insight, wisdom, and knowledge, I've now combined that into 2 days to accelerate results for individuals. I hope that sort of helps you in a nutshell there, Louisa.
Yeah, I love the fact that you experienced a relationship breakdown yourself and you wanted to grow from that and to then use your knowledge to help others to grow from that as well. So the blog post that you wrote was about sort of making that really hard decision to separate. And I think it's something that
appears to have gone. If you can hear me, Louisa.
Okay, we seem to be having some...
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. So the blog post that you wrote was about sort of making that really hard decision about whether to separate from a partner or not. And, it's something that I see people have agonized about. And certainly, I only see people who've made that decision to separate. And I know that you come at it from a different angle from me. one of the things that really struck me about your blog post was the whole having an honest conversation with yourself about the responsibility in the relationship. And it's certainly something that I focus on a lot in mediation. The focus can often be on the other person rather on yourself. So I was really interested to hear what you had to say about that.
Yes, the personal responsibility for our relationship is so because if we're going to separate, it's so important that we can rebuild our relationship, understand and take responsibility for our emotions. And what I mean by this is that in a relationship, if we point blame, if we point blame at our partners and say, you made me feel this way, I'm upset, what you said, conflict can really escalate. But when we realise that actually, where does this conflict come from? Because in our most intimate relationships, we press each other's buttons, which is most definitely, it's part of the relationship because we're testing each other's boundaries. But what we're also doing is we live with core beliefs in our life. And we grow up with these core beliefs that we learn from our parents, our primary caregivers, our mum primarily, and also our father. And just for example, I'll give you the core beliefs. We can have a number of these that we sort of live our life out by. That could be, I'm not good enough, don't tell me what to do, or you're not listening to me. So, if we grow up with that experience with our parents, that when we enter an intimate relationship, we also play that out in our relationship. So when our partner maybe presses our not good enough button and we react and it activates our behavior around this, we then become defensive and we can create arguments from that. But then when we take responsibility, when a partner presses a button, and for example, the other day I was talking to my husband and he said, he got a bit frustrated because I'd said something, but I said, he's very self-aware and how we communicate together. I said to him, I've pressed your not good enough button just there, and I just want you to be aware of that. And he said, no, you're right, Karen. I'll tell you when I'm off it. And this is a language that we use that, for example, if I've been upset, I will say to him, I recognise my not good enough button. I'm just in that emotion and that frustration, or maybe I'm a bit irritable, whatever it might be. I just say, I'll come back to you when I'm off of it. And what that does, I'm taking responsibility, and this is where, as individuals, thinking about what's going wrong in a relationship, we need to do our emotions and what's coming up for us. And when we start to practice this and when we start to observe ourselves, we can then realize and change our communication, the way we speak to our partners. Because this example, Louisa, that if I said to a partner, sorry, everything keeps going, you make me feel this way, that way on time, of course a relationship break down. But when we start to say to me at that point made me feel upset, and because awareness, I recognize that I wasn't feeling heard, because I grew up in a family where my father wouldn't always listen to me. So when I'm talking to Dave and he's not listening to me, I start getting frustrated. But because I know where it comes from, I can take responsibility for that. And that's the point that I just want to share with listeners, that or mediators that are working with clients, that how so important is that during conflict we need to take responsibility for our emotions, but also our behavior in the relationship, because we each have 50% responsibility in a relationship to make it work. It's not a partner's job. We have 50%, to build a stronger relationship. Does that help, Louisa?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think, sort of looking at things from my perspective, I see those patterns play out even after the separation has happened in mediation meetings, because just because you've taken the decision to separate from someone, it doesn't mean that they stop magically pushing your buttons, or that you don't end up having the same arguments over again. So I do think that's
Yeah.
really interesting. I think also what I think is interesting about your work is that often, sort of, the people that I see have separated, but they're very wary of repeating the same patterns over again. And I think, sort of, the approach you take can help people to sort of address that, so that they're not going through the same problems in their next relationship.
Yeah, very much so. You know, one of the things that I've created, and this is the point of just where I introduced earlier, I accelerate and I share the tools, techniques, strategies, and insight individuals need to empower them on their relationship. It's not therapy. Coaching is about helping individuals to work toward empowering future. By counselling is looking, and as you said, sort of, I take individuals through 4 steps. Just in summary, just to briefly explain how it works, the first step is about understanding the way we communicate with ourselves. Are we more positive or negative? Do we have beliefs that hold us back? For example, the fear of being hurt, the fear of not being good enough in a relationship. It's understanding and getting clarity about what we could be doing that's sabotaging our communication in a relationship. So it's starting to build up a framework of what we are doing ourselves personally to sabotage this, but also how we can reframe the way we communicate. So I take individuals or couples through that first step. The second step is getting clear how we are naturally wired. In business, you know, men particularly love coaching in business, and they understand what it means, and also, you know, business women as well. So it's understanding how we're wired at work to recognize we know our strengths and weaknesses as individuals and as adults. But when we start to really break it down and get clear about how we're wired at work, I then take it to the next level. I take individuals to help understand how they tick in a relationship, because we also follow 3 very distinct behavior patterns in our relationships. And that's, we could either be very needy, we're very maybe steady or constant, or we could be very distant and avoid, to become an avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
Where if a partner is wanting to address emotions, one partner may not want to be able to do that. And this is where blame is passed, and to say, well, you know, perhaps I'll find somebody else that can help me, or you know, that I'll meet somebody else that I won't have these same problems with. So this is really key, because when we get really clear about our wiring, about becoming more aware of men and women's wiring, guess what? When we're in our relationship, we start to communicate differently, because we recognise it's just a natural wiring, and it's our makeup. But what it does, and the beauty of it, is that we can then change the way we communicate. Self-awareness is just so powerful. Then also the third is very much the change, because point that I mentioned, personal responsibility about how we how in our relationship determines how others to us. But take personal responsibility for our happiness. You know, what do individuals do to make themselves happy? How confident, how resilient are they at bouncing back with life challenges? this sort of very much linked and negative behaviour. Yeah. So it's when we start spending time ourselves that we don't look for our partners to be happy because we're doing that for ourselves. You know, in relationship, many couples come together because they're expecting their partner to set their needs. We need to set needs. And then just briefly, the final step is understanding how we deal with conflict and what we can do differently. And if we're currently doing the first step, we're figuring out what negative patterns and thoughts sabotage us. If we're honest about how we to understand our partners better, ourselves, our happiness, and then when we get to the point of how to deal with conflict, guess what? We can bring love back into flow so much more quickly. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful. And actually, one of the things that was occurring to me whilst you were speaking is that quite often I see clients who say things like, actually at work, I'm a really good communicator. I think my work
Not
colleagues...
sure if the sound is just broken. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me, Karen? Is that better? I quite often see people who say,
I can.
Okay. So I sometimes talk to people who say things like, at work, I'm a good communicator. My work colleagues would say that I'm empathetic. And I feel that I have these skills at work, but I don't feel I have them in my relationship. And my partner or my ex-partner feels that I'm not empathetic and that I'm not a good communicator. And I just wondered sort of what your perspective was on that.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know, one of the styles that we grow up with, and I'll just use one specific example, that very often someone who is distant in a relationship, this relates back to how the mother would relate to them. Let's say a child in a cot, if a mother is unresponsive to them emotionally, and not always sharing love, a child subconsciously learns how to be distant and that they can't express themselves on an emotional level because that's what they've learned from their mother, or you know, and also from if their father that is that way, but it's more predominantly the mother relationship. So we take that behavior pattern subconsciously into our relationship. So if somebody is aware that actually the steps that I take them through in my program, where they get really clear about the 3 different behaviors, they recognize themselves and think, crikey, wow, you know, I recognize that this is where it's coming from. This is how I'm naturally wired because what I learned. But then in a relationship, when we acknowledge that and we say, do you know what, I recognize that, you know, I may during conflict, I'll use this example, that during conflict, they may not want to discuss the problem. They may want to ignore the problem. So they walk away. They need that distance and that space to deal with their problem, or they'll bury it under the carpet and say, you know, they'll blame their partners to say, you're crazy. You know, I really don't want to talk about this. They'll avoid the subject altogether. So nothing is resolved because they can't deal with conflict. They walk away. And this is when we start to recognize that, and maybe we start to change our behavior, and it's one step at a time that we do that, that if, for example, I would say that I'm a distant character, to say, well, I recognize my behavior. What I'm going to do differently next time is to try and listen to you. Mm-hmm. So if we're working together as a couple and we recognize our behaviors that are coming out, we can start to support each other in a more healthy, more powerful way. And this is the healthy communication program that we need to understand. And that's where we can really start to create different changes in our relationship.
Fantastic, thank you. I suppose to close up, what I'd be really interested to hear is your sort of main pieces of advice for anybody that is wrestling with the decision about, you know, is this a relationship that I can improve, or is it really a relationship that I think needs to come to an end now?
Yeah. Really good question, Louisa. You know, at the point that if a couple are considering separation or divorce, if they're not self-aware, they're likely to repeat the same mistakes in another relationship. It will just be packaged differently because they'll have a different person that they're with. Also, if they're not informed, you know, if we go in with a decision based on what we're feeling and we have no awareness around why we're feeling that way, we're going in making an ignorant decision. We're not informed making our decision. Of course, mediation can help through that process. But if we then, you know, speak to a relationship coach, and this is where I really love to, you know, I offer 30-minute telephones to have a you help I need to know before I make my choice. And also, it's so important that we get this informed knowledge, because if we have to remind ourselves as well, why were we partners? What brought us together in the first place, to the point of what we had, the foundations to, and then to consider, are they in the right place, either individually or as a couple, to work together through the steps that I've outlined. But, you know, if a couple or one person, if that's the female, that thinks, well, you know, I'd like to work with a relationship coach, she is often the biggest guiding communicator in the relationship that can start to change the way we react. So, but primarily, if couples are in the right place to say, yes, let's work at this, if they then got all the informed knowledge that they need from, you know, speaking to yourself as a mediator, speaking to myself as a relationship coach and expert, if they've then got their decisions to say, yes, we've got the tools, the strategies and the techniques to work together at this, let's give it a chance, let's give it 6 months to work at this. Or they will get their answers to say, actually, I think it's the right time that we move forward. That's when individuals are informed to make the best choice.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Karen. And when I do the video, I will also put it into the original blog post so that anybody can watch the video alongside reading the blog post, because I think that will be really helpful for people. And there will be a link to the blog post on the Facebook page. So thanks very much for today, Karen. And
my pleasure.
And I also wanted to say that there'll be no Facebook Live for me next Friday, because I'm going to be closed for Christmas. So if I don't speak to you before, Karen, have a lovely Christmas too.
Yes, fantastic. You have a lovely time, and Christmas wishes to all the viewers.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Louisa.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.